Bradshaw. Today is Monday, May 8th, 2023. Jess, can you verify the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
All right, we are now at the section of our meeting where there's an opportunity for our citizens to speak. Have we had any sign up?
We have no speakers.
Okay. Moving forward then into the action items. The first action is the approval of minutes from April 10th, 2023. To follow up, we do follow the parliamentary rules of the Roberts Rules of Laws, and with two new board members, or to say one returning, Mr. Watt is new to the committee. You are not required to vote on the meetings, but you do have that option to do so. Are there any discussions or clarifications on the meeting minutes from last month? Okay. Be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Any abstaining?
Any abstain? Okay. Motion passes 4-0-1. The next action item is the approval of vouchers. Sherry, did we receive any questions?
No, there were no questions this month. I know.
Okay. Any discussion? It's going to be a great meeting.
You're going to beat Pat's record.
I would be looking for a motion to approve the vouchers.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the next action item for approval is the audit request for approval. Mr. Clark, if you want to lead into that.
Sherry led the process for our office. I'll let her introduce it.
Okay, so we were at the end of our contract with Baker Tilly, so we went out to bid, and we had 4 proposals. There's a document in there that, in board docs, that shows all the bids, and of the 4 bids we had, 3 of them were pretty competitive price-wise, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about them. They're in order of financial, and the first 3 were great options. All 3 of them are great options. We would work with any one of them. Lauterbach and Amen came in lowest. They are a company that is currently big in Illinois. They don't have a huge Wisconsin presence yet, but they are looking to get into Wisconsin, which is why they're coming in pretty competitive on their bidding. We interviewed them, we did reference checks. Heather and I both were able to see them at a business office conference that they were presenting on. Very sharp, really impressed with what they bring to the table. They specialize in governmental accounting only, so that's their focus. We think that they'd be an excellent candidate, and their pricing certainly is competitive. We talked to them about what happens at the end of 3 years. You're coming in with these great bids, but what happens at the end of 3 years? And when you look at their proposal, their last year was really only discounted by $2,000. Now, of course, we can't, look at the magic 8 ball and know what the economy is going to look like in 3 years, but I think they want to be competitive and remain competitive. So that's one excellent option. And then Kerber Rose is also a company that's big into the school districts. We haven't worked with them personally, but Heather worked with one of the people that's over there now when they were with a different company and had high praise for them. Plus, their references were excellent. The only thing about the Kerber Rose proposal is that they have one component that they have additional charges for that were kind of hard to incorporate into here, and it has to do with GASB regulations and charging on a per basis for that. So that makes their bid a little harder to evaluate against the rest because there would be additional costs, not a large amount, but a big enough cost, probably guessing around anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 more per year. Clifton Larson Allen is who we had prior to Baker Tilly, and have always had very positive experiences with them. The team that they were proposing, excellent team, we know, and would be happy to work with again. Baker Tilly kind of priced themselves, in my opinion, out of the competition when you look at the bid. But we put these options out to the board. Our recommendation is the Lauterbach and Ammon, because we do save almost $30,000 over the 3-year period. Very impressed, as I said, with the company. Think they will do a great job for us. They did hire someone, so while they are big in Illinois, they recently brought on board someone who has been with one of the big companies in Wisconsin and specialized up in the Fox River Valley area and worked with some of the bigger districts. So she would be working on our audit, and she brings a lot of expertise to the table with Wisconsin.
All right, any questions, discussion items?
What is a membership audit?
A membership audit is when we have to be audited on our third Friday count. So they come in and they look at our third Friday count, our summer count, and our January count to make sure that we appropriately counted the number of students. And we did have one for this year, and the way the contracts work, it's kind of interesting because we're in the middle of the contract. So we did hire Baker Tilly because we were working with them currently, and they did our membership audit for us, and it turned out really well. We had no discrepancies from our last updated version of it. The auditors found nothing wrong with that.
Thank you.
Does that occur on a regular cadence? Do we know, like, it happens every so many years, or is it?
Gosh, I want to say every 3 years or so,
They have
but
one every 3 or 5 years.
somewhere in there,
And
yeah.
another time, I don't know if this is written down, but if you have trouble on an audit, you usually get the audit the next year.
Right.
That's how it usually works. So
Yeah,
we
but
should
that
have
is
one.
actually what they do if you have findings.
So there's a
they
chance we
come
might
back.
not have enough. That's why we always put if needed on that column, because we don't know if we're going to incur this cost or not.
It's definitely not an annual cost, but when we were trying to compare over the course of them,
Yeah, and we also made
Them
some
all together.
assumptions on the number of federal programs that would be audited.
thank you,
We have
Darren.
several because of our size, but we make a guess of the number that would be needed each year. So
Each bid came in with a different number of audits, federal programs as part of the single audit, and they each had a different cost to it. So we assumed 3, which is a pretty typical number for us, to be able to compare apples to apples on the proposals.
Right, and so just clarifying, right, they're going to be starting in June for this year, so this fiscal year end is when they would be in place to start. And we've talked with them about on-site presence and the having face-to-face and working with our team, and that's not an issue.
Absolutely. Now, some of them still would like to do a hybrid approach, which is, it's acceptable because there's a lot of data that they would have direct access into Skyward so they can get data and look at it and start preparing. But actually, the one that we're recommending, or that we feel is a really good choice, they're big into on-site, in person. So.
Yeah, especially the first year. You get to know the people, you know who you're talking to. And they really said, it's up to you, it's your choice. But we would like, and even when we say face-to-face, we're still uploading the vast
Right.
majority of data. But there's some things they have to go through, you know, hands-on. But to lose those conversations that you have with your auditor when they're here, I think we lean towards face-to-face. Now, maybe year 3, it's a little less, but we'll see.
I agree. It's critical in year 1 that they understand our business. I trust that they are experienced working with school districts and understanding there's a matter of repetition and routine that you would get with GASB standards, but I like that part. Now, the only other question that I would have is, every year with Baker Tilly, we had the material weakness, right, or the significant call-out, which is just because they're playing the role of a doer and an auditor. Is that going to be the same?
The weakness of not having.
Right. It's not completely independent.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they complete the financial.
Financials and-
So,
Okay.
you know, that's there for 90% of the school districts, so. And this firm specializes in governmental
Correct.
work, that's all they,
So they do municipalities, school districts, and they do quite a few. I mean, they've got a large business in Illinois. They've been in business, I believe, 26 years, I believe it was. It's just that they're trying to expand their presence now into Wisconsin. And the school districts that are working with them in Wisconsin currently are a little smaller, but had nothing but great things to say about them. And they've worked with massively big districts in Illinois, so they have that ability to work with big districts. But we would be probably their biggest in Wisconsin at this point.
Okay.
and I think there's value in rotating your auditor as well.
I do too.
I don't know about every 3 years, but every 6, I don't know if that's a bad thing.
Any other questions or discussion items? Okay, I'd be looking for a motion.
Lauterbach, right? I move the approval of our auditor to be Lauterbach and Ammon for a 3-year term as presented.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
All opposed? Passes 5-0.
You're going to do the fees. Or you want me to do the fees? I can do the,
Moving on to our next action item, which is the approval of the 2023-2024 student fees. Mr. Clark?
yeah, this is just a procedural thing we go through every year for the following school year's student fees. And the reason we do it is they're rolling out their registration materials, so we can have it updated and Infinite Campus can be included. So we're not recommending any changes to student fees for the 23-24 school year. We've not had any changes in several years. Really, the most significant change was probably 5 years ago when we got rid of class fees. So just, unless there's questions on the fees, we'd be looking for approval.
I have a question.
Dr. Piasek?
An unplanned question, but it just came to me. Is there a free parking lot at West?
No,
There's a free parking lot at North.
north.
Right. I was just, what about South?
Mm-mm.
So what do the students do, can't or don't want to pay for parking at West or South? Park in Rivers
can probably
Crossing
speak to
across the
South.
street?
At South, they park at Pick and Save. And at West, I believe they park in the neighborhoods.
The reason for the overflow, or for the free satellite parking at North is just because we have that lot available?
I think it's more tradition than anything.
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't know if I know the original origin of that decision, but
One of the things I was told was that there's less neighborhood parking for the students, that it's all, but I didn't look at that myself, but I have heard that when we were trying to figure this whole thing out a couple of years ago, it was that there just wasn't enough parking on the street around that school.
it's just the way it's been. Not that that's the right way
Yeah.
or the wrong way, but
You know, I say that not coming here thinking I was going to even ask that question. I just had this realization that, you know, there is that option for North students. It's still a bit of a hike in the winter. But hadn't really thought through that. So I greatly appreciate that we're keeping the fees flat, not pushing any of our increased cost onto students. So I think status quo is the right approach. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'd be looking for a motion.
I move that we approve the recommended fee schedule without change for the next school year.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Wad. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. We are now moving forward with the discussion and information items, and our first update is going to be eAchieve report, and I believe that we have the principal from eAchieve, Jason Smith, here to present.
Yes, we have Jason here, and Jason has been busily preparing a presentation that will hopefully address all the questions that we've been getting on eAchieve, and also be able to open up the conversation for those questions. Let me get him.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for inviting me and for the opportunity to share an update of a little bit of the state at eAchieve, and also answer some of your questions about marketing and enrollments. So I was going to break it up into 3 parts. I was just going to give a brief introduction to eAchieve. I know we haven't had a chance to do this for a few years, and we have new board members, so I thought I would just give an update a little bit about how our school functions, take some questions and discuss if we'd like, and then share a little bit about marketing, and then take some discussion and questions, and then finish up with an update on enrollments and follow suit with discussion and questions. So I will stick to the point, but I do want to make sure I get a chance to address all the information that was requested. So I'm Jason Smith. I'm the principal. This is my 4th year. I was associate principal for 5 years prior to that, and taught for 19 years at South High School. So I've been in Waukesha my whole career. And I'm thrilled to be part of eAchieve. It's a wonderful opportunity to serve kids in a different way. And eAchieve Academy is really 2 schools. We have 2 separate charters. We have eAchieve Elementary, grades K-5, and eAchieve Academy, grades 6-12. But we typically just refer to eAchieve as eAchieve, but I wanted you to know that they were actually 2 different schools, and we do try to treat them differently and appropriately at the different levels. We function on a series of non-negotiables, and these I think are the 3 most important. We treat everyone with dignity and respect. We make decisions based on individual student needs, and we persevere in serving students even when they struggle to do so. And we use these to guide our work across the board at our school. We just finished our open enrollment marketing season, and I pulled some of the highlights from our information session presentations, and I won't read them all. But I think there's a few that are important to note as we compare ourselves to other virtual charter schools. 1 is we've been doing it for a long time. 2, we have teachers that are school district employees, which is different from some of the for-profit virtual charter schools. And many of the virtual charters have different pay scales and different structures of benefits and things for their employees. And our teachers enjoy the full benefits and full opportunities of being a school district Waukesha teacher. And I think that's a really important point to note. Teachers also are able to design their own lessons based on state standards. Many virtual charter schools purchase curriculum, and while we do purchase textbooks and resources, our teachers do get to design their own classes versus purchasing them from vendors, and I think that's also what sets us apart. We've graduated over 2,000 students. We have a full student services team with counselors, a school psych, social worker, and a full-time special education department with a speech and language pathologist. So I think these are highlights and celebrations of the instructional program that we provide students. And 2 celebrations are that in our last report cards at both the secondary level and at the elementary level, we met expectations, which is difficult for virtual charter schools to do, so we're incredibly proud of the celebration. And we also do okay on state standardized tests. We're right at the top of the other big virtual charter schools, and our trends are at the state or exceeding the state or district level, so we're proud of that work as well. These are 2 words that when I taught and didn't know a lot about eAchieve, I always giggled a little bit at the word asynchronous, but now that I live it every day, it's part of my vocabulary. And we use those words to help families and students understand the two ways that they learn. One is the synchronous learning where they meet with their teacher in person, and asynchronous when they're working at their own. And our school is about 90% asynchronous and about 10% synchronous, where there's live sessions each week per classes and a little bit more at the elementary level. And just a couple of notes of the elementary program. We use InterReading as our literacy program and Zern as our math program, where there's weekly and daily lessons in both. Self-paced units in social studies and science. We have a music teacher, and our classroom teachers also are responsible for their art lessons. And at the secondary level, our courses are similar to SDW. We do offer a number of different electives, and we use Blackboard, and we use textbooks and resources, some the same as the district, for example, StudySync. One live session for each course, plus about 4 hours of asynchronous learning per week. And we submit and grade through Blackboard as our learning management system. And at the middle school, we use proficiency grades, but high school students do get letter grades and grade points. So a quick overview of our school. Are there any questions or anything I could go into a little bit more in detail about just how we sort of operate eAchieve?
Thanks, Jason. That's really helpful. As I've gotten to know more about eAchieve and come to appreciate it also as a parent consumer of eAchieve, I appreciate the just the breadth of AP courses. I think that's something a lot of our kids go to. So I'm curious, just thinking back to recent teaching and learning discussions, when the district adopts a new AP textbook, for example, is that something that your instructors pick up, or do you handle AP separately?
That's a good question. We try to stay as connected as we can to the teaching and learning department and committees. And when new resources are being reviewed, we're in those discussions. And sometimes it works out that we are part of those discussions and adopt those, and other times we do something different based on what's available in the virtual world. Sometimes it just isn't, it doesn't make sense because it's not compatible for online learning. But more and more vendors are obviously making more things compatible, so we're trying to stay as aligned as we can. So as much as we can, we'd like to do that.
So the virtual offering or the digital offering is something that's
Right, it could be
important for
different
you.
depending on how the face-to-face product, how that pushes out in a digital world. If it doesn't work well for asynchronous learning, then that's something we may not be able to adopt.
Okay. Just a follow-up question to that, because I know integrated math is something that as the district has kind of moved into integrated 1 and 2. It looks like eAchieve has flowed into that as well. Do you maintain both the integrated math and then algebra, geometry options to
Yes.
align with other districts too?
Yes, that's a great question. So we wanted to go and offer the integrated pathway to align with Waukesha, but knowing we have students that come to us in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, we also felt compelled to offer algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 as well. So it's more preps for our teachers, but it's what we're currently doing, and it seems to be serving kids well. So,
Thank you.
yes.
So I am interested in one of I'm just kind of following up on Dr. Piasek's comments on these pieces. A lot of the focus for us over the last 18 months is to try to stay and sway away from the amount of time that teachers have to self-curate. And that's been part of the largest push that we have really done in the amount of spending that we've done for curriculum that supports both. Is that something, this is such a different, right,
Yes.
kind of service that we provide?
Yes.
Does that work? Does that not work? Ideally, right, we want to make our teachers to be able to spend more time on the instruction without having to build the instruction. So can you walk through that?
Right. I think you're 100% correct. You're trying to maintain teacher autonomy to design lessons based on their expertise without them having to develop the entire course, and also without them just following a textbook because that's what the textbook resource provides. So you're trying to find that sweet spot, and we work pretty hard to try to find that sweet spot. We stay connected to the district committees and all of the different content areas and work with them, especially when curriculum reviews happen. Sometimes we don't adopt those resources for the reasons I mentioned, but we are starting to have some conversations about that very same concern. That is, how much time spending on creating when that's time spent working with kids in small groups or in one-on-one sessions. So I do think we need to to start to shift more in that direction without losing the opportunity for teachers to build lessons based on their expertise.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good, thank you.
no problem. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can keep going.
Okay. All right, so we'll talk marketing for a few minutes. So there's about 65 virtual charter schools in Wisconsin now, and that's very different from not too long ago. So it's a really competitive landscape. So we're one of 4 or 5 what we call the big virtual charters that take lots of kids in from outside of their districts, but there's a lot of smaller ones. And as more start, and especially through the pandemic, rules are a little bit loose. Some of the new schools don't know exactly all of the rules, and it can be confusing. One of the things that is posing a challenge that I have finally heard from prospective families this year is they ask, do we provide a stipend? Because some of the virtual charters are offering a stipend to the families to enroll, and in lieu of them taking elective courses, they will pay them a set dollar amount to take swim lessons or have a Y membership or do some of the electives in the community versus paying for elective teachers. And it feels like a gray area, and of course we have elective teachers in all of our areas and haven't even discussed this, but I have heard this from other families when they call and inquire. So it's just, I just wanted to kind of like portray the landscape that it's competitive and that there's some rules that are changing and maybe being bent a little bit, but and other school districts just are trying to start virtual charters to keep their own kids and not lose them to, you know, good virtual charter schools like ours. So I just think that that's important to understand that as we lay out the marketing. There are also 2 open enrollment periods. And forgive me if you know this, but I just think it's important to kind of lay out some of the parameters. The first one is February 1st through April 28th. That's the open enrollment period that we just finished. All students are accepted with very few exceptions, including students with IEPs and 504s. And historically, most of our students join during this window. The next open enrollment period is the alternate open enrollment that starts on July 1st and runs until we close, which is typically about March. Regular ed students are accepted, but special education students are waitlisted and then released from the waitlist based on space. And in the past 6 years or so, more of our students enrolled during this time. So that's really a shift in terms of how students and families are making decisions about when they make their decision about school. It's happening later, and as a result, we're starting to think differently about how we market to that, which I'll get into in a minute. When I started at Achieve until last year, we had a marketing manager on staff, and we focused on TV and radio. We focused on increasing website traffic, some mail, and found out that the most effective marketing, one of the most effective, was just personal references. So it was more of a traditional marketing campaign. 21-22, we continued with a marketing manager and staff, but I took on more of a leadership role and oversight. And we built a recruitment team. We had more voices present. We hired a social media consultant because we were not doing anything really at that time with social media. And we tried some new things as well. And one of the questions that I wanted to answer for tonight was, you know, how do we determine some of these things, our needs and our market? Our marketings were trying to maintain numbers that we had at the 21-22 year level, higher than pre-pandemic, but we're never going to be at pandemic levels, nor do we think that that's probably in the best interest of the size school that we want to support. But certainly we'd like to be higher than we were, and that's where we are right now. This gives us one section of elementary, and it gives us about a 250 to 1 student ratio, which drops us from what it had been at 300 to 1, and that's just too high. So 250 is still high, but it's manageable. And we also want to enroll as many students as we can by September 1st, and we know those students pass their classes at a higher rate than those that join after. We're targeting 25 to 40-year-old females with school-aged children. And to determine our marketing campaign success, obviously it's how many students are enrolled, but there's some other metrics that the company clicks through all the way to our website through social media ads. It's the percentage of individuals that watch entire ads, which is pretty high through this campaign, and are the people getting the ads that we're trying to target, which seems like we've done a really good job of that in the last few years. So in 22-23 this year, we made a pretty significant shift. We shifted from an in-house marketing manager to a retention and recruitment model, with the premise being that the more kids we retain, the fewer we have to recruit. And we will still always have a transient population, because I think that's just the nature of students and families that attend virtual school. But we work really hard to try to keep our kids. We've put a number of human resources into more support for students and families, and we want to keep more kids than sending them back. You probably are aware, but I'll remind everyone that if students don't participate at a virtual charter school, then by state statute, we have to return them back to the resident district. We try to take as long as we can. We try to put everything in place for them to be successful, but legally we have to do that at some point. But our point is if we can get them to be successful here and keep them, then we don't have to get as many new students every year. So we hired a company called Visionary Studios. They're 3 younger gentlemen that run this marketing company. They started doing a lot of video production, and we hired them to take over our marketing. So they coordinate all of our contracts for us. We're going to launch a new website this summer and focusing on social media, brand building, and year-round marketing. So we're trying to see this as a year-round marketing event versus a February, March, April marketing event based on when kids and families are making decisions. So if they're going to make decisions in August, then we want to be there and letting them know we're ready for them. So we're very happy with the work that Visionary Studios did. If it's okay, I'm going to just play this. Hopefully you'll be able to hear. I'm going to play our 30-second ad if that's okay.
Academy's online program gives students excellent education with the flexibility that many families need. Anyone in Wisconsin can attend our online program tuition-free. Students are taught by leading Wisconsin certified teachers who develop courses and host live classes which students can follow on their own schedule. Students get one-on-one time with teachers who are invested in their success. Open enrollment starts now. Visit eachieveacademy.com to learn more.
And then I'll play. Whoops.
Academy.
Sorry about that. What have I done here? There we go. Sorry about that, I got stuck in a little bit of a loop there. So we're really happy with the work that Visionary Studios did for us. And very happy with the video production. We had done some animated videos in years past and just didn't feel they were effective and wanted to do something different. And happy that they were not only able to produce high quality video, but with their overall ability to market, to take over our marketing. Felt like that was the right decision to make. So one of the handouts I shared was our marketing spreadsheet budget over the last few years. And there's a lot of details there. I tried to pull out some of the key pieces from this year. So you can see we're allocated and about what we spent. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of the bigger, it is a lot of money, so I wanted to highlight a few of the bigger vendors. Multiview is another company that we've been working with. They're really focusing at serving up targeted ads to the right consumer. So when you have been looking for outdoor patio furniture and then you start to get Facebook ads about that, that's part of what they're doing. Top Floor is our website hosting company and our database. We are going to be shifting to a new website this summer, which is going to reduce that cost significantly. And then you see some of the local media vendors that we've paid quite a bit to for their services, and comparatively how much cheaper the Google ads are, and we get a bigger bang for our buck, but we want to be in all of those different media outlets. And then Visionary Studios charges us about $30,000 for their services to do the oversight of the work and to develop the ads. So I'm just going to share a couple of slides from them very briefly. This is how they approached the timeline. Interesting, they started off with TV and radio to try to build brand equity, and then through the campaign into April, they then started to target through social media to try to get folks to see the ad, perhaps on TV and radio, and then through a streaming service, and then social media, so then they could click and get to our website. So it was a focused approach that they took to get more traffic to our website where you can enroll at eAchieve. So this kind of shares that overview. And then These are some of the outlets and some of the impressions and some of the different media platforms. We did run preview ads at the Marcus Theaters, which was something new that we had tried. Felt that that was a good target audience in order to get our message across. We did run a late campaign in the Fox Valley. We do attract a number of students from that part of the state, so we wanted to make sure that we had a late presence there. And then these are some of the results in terms of 6.5 million impressions. 97% of the viewers watched our entire ad, and we had 6,000 website clicks. So we feel good about the work that they've done and being with us for about 8 months. We feel like it's a real promising future working with this company. So next marketing steps, we'll continue to build brand awareness in the next 2 months, and then we'll start a new campaign in July and run it through October, November. And we're gonna facilitate a number of in-person events this summer. We've got a Zoo Kids Night and some other kids events, and we'll staff those with teachers and office folks that will meet families and do some in-person recruiting. So that is our marketing summary. Hopefully I've answered some of the questions and would be happy to answer any more that you have.
Thank you. For me, I've been the one asking a lot of the questions on, because we see the money come through and what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, I think this is really good. I'm impressed with being able to see what they've done in a short amount of time. I'm obviously familiar with marketing and the impacts of that, and I think some of the questions that I had were really during like Super Bowl time. I would see the RSA Academy that was played repetitively. So a couple of pieces I think I'll kick off and then open up for the rest of the group is with the decline in enrollment that we're seeing this year for the first time ever, and obviously I agree with you that the pre-pandemic and the pandemic, that's an unrealistic, I would say, trend line. Mm-hmm. It would be great to get back there, but how do you foresee the enrollment pieces going? If this marketing campaign takes off as what I expect it would do, how do you see enrollment coming?
Yeah, what I'm anticipating is we were at about 800 prior total students, K-12, prior to pandemic, and they were like 780 or something that June of 2020. September 1st of 2020, we had 2,700 enrollments between full-time and part-time. And then post-pandemic, we've gradually decreased. I'm thinking like 1,100 is probably, 1,000 to 1,100 is probably where we'll wind up, maybe a little lower, maybe a little higher, but somewhere in that number, I think, is where we'll be. And that's full-time students. And one thing I want to mention is that part-time students that take 1 or 2 classes, while it's only a 0.20 of an FTE, those still add up in terms of our staffing. So it gets a little bit complex to figure out staffing, but in terms of numbers of students, I do think we'll be somewhere between 900 and 1,100 is where we want to be.
Great. I think we all recognize the value that eAchieve has on our district and our overall portfolio and picture, so those are really great numbers. Thank you. Any other questions, feedback? Dr. Piasek?
Thank you. Just a quick one about, it's not quick, about special education. Looks like the ratio of special ed is increasing a lot compared to last year, but quite a bit even compared to the last few years. How are you responding to that demand, and is that a partnership with the district, or do you have dedicated teachers for that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have 6 full-time special education teachers and 1 part-time speech and language pathologist. And last year, their caseloads were at about 29. This year, they're about 26. And we were able to work with Patty Havel, who helped us build a weighted caseload model, which I know the face-to-face schools have done. Ours looks a little different, but we were able to build one that helped to create some equity across our team. We have to turn away a lot of students that enroll, or I should say apply with us, especially in the summer, that have IEPs, and we turn those students away because of space. Obviously, if you were to take another 100 students that had IEPs, then that has a ripple effect on staffing across your school. So we do have to be careful about how that all balances out, and we'll work closely with Sharon. But I can foresee us filling 6 full-time special education teachers for the foreseeable future. We have quite a bit of interest in families coming, and we don't lose a lot of our special education families either. The students stay and have success. So,
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Wad?
Hi, so you had mentioned, how competitive the market is, right? And I think if I'm reading the numbers I saw from DPI that lists the enrollments across the various districts, among those top 5 or 6 that you talked about, I've noticed that there are a couple who have managed to increase their enrollment since COVID. Most have seen declines. I think all of them have landed at 10% or more above where they were at pre-COVID, roughly. Do we have any insight as to what some of those other districts, and I'm thinking of the one in McFarland, out of the McFarland district that.
WEVA.
Yeah, WEVA,
Yeah.
that's correct, thank you. Do we have any insight as to what they're doing to help drive their enrollment numbers higher at a ratio that is significantly higher than what we've seen?
I have an idea. I can't speak to it for sure, but I do have an idea. WEVA is a for-profit charter school, so their teachers are on a different pay structure. They also have a much more significant corporate marketing budget. So we can't compete with that in terms of marketing. So we try to be very intentional and focused on what we do and where we spend our money. And that's been always one of the challenges, that you're competing against somebody with much deeper pockets. I do know some of the folks who work there, and I know they do a good job instructionally with kids, but just from a marketing standpoint, I think that could be one of the differences.
Thank you.
Mr. McCaffrey?
What does the lead conversion look like now? We used to have that discussion quite a bit. I'm sure we're taking leads through the website.
Could you just say that one more time?
What's the lead conversion look like? So when a lead comes in on a.
What's the rate?
Yeah,
I don't know, but I will find out for you.
because usually, I have a little experience with websites. That's usually how you gauge a website's success, is the conversion on the leads that come in. And then any ancillary conversion you get off of those leads that come in. I was just wondering, we used to have that. Rick?
Yep, I will get that for you. Since I have overseen the marketing, the person who did that wasn't tracked, so I'll follow up with you with that.
And the new website has some sort of lead tool in it.
Yes.
That goes into a different database, or how does that look? Are we taking what we have in our current database, and is that information going to shift over smoothly? I know. So we have tech guys.
We're working with Mary Jo King. We're going to
Okay.
partner with her on a district website.
Okay.
We have to figure out the CRM part of it, the database side of it.
Right, okay. And then another question I have is, are we marketing to any school districts that may not have the offerings, especially at high math? I know there's a lot of school districts, even private schools, that don't really have the resources that we have at eAchieve and Waukesha to have those advanced, especially math courses.
Yep.
I know Catholic Memorial sends the kids to eAchieve for high math courses.
Yep.
So do we market to those districts or those schools?
Not as much as we should.
Okay,
We do attend the counselors convention.
Okay.
To try to share that information. When, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had lots of school districts reaching out. They wanted to partner with us. They wanted to purchase seats. And I tried really hard during that time with every district that contacted us to have that conversation then, that we want to partner, that we're here to serve kids that maybe aren't being served in your system. We're not here to steal your kids, and try to build some relationships. So hopefully that helped. But we do need to do more direct for that reason. I think that's a great idea.
and then what does summer school look like? Are we running a summer school program to get that FTE?
Waukesha Summer School has subsumed our summer school classes. So all the online courses are run through Teaching and Learning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Some of our teachers teach them, but we're not actually running those.
You're not
courses.
actually pulling those numbers in, counting them. Okay, excellent, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, we had several, I forget all the districts when COVID started, who were looking for options, and I can think of 3 or 4 just off the top of my head in the metro area, and none of them led to, it goes against everything you do as a school district. You want to protect your kids. So the thought of partnering, I think it was kind of foreign, probably, to most of them. But I do see that, and I often wonder when you see all these districts that are now rolling out their own virtual platform, why they're not partnering with someone like us. I don't.
They think it's easier than it is.
Yep, I
Is
think that's the
exactly why.
case, yeah.
Yep.
Great. Mrs. Voigt?
Do we have a lot of students, back years ago, we talked about having each of the kids take one online class, during their 4-year, program. Is that still a factor? Do we still encourage that, require that?
We don't require it anymore.
Okay.
That's probably 6 years, 7
I would say,
years
what,
since
6
that
years ago?
requirement went away.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a lot of in-district students that take 1 or 2 part-time classes with us, and a number of out-of-district part-timers as well.
Dr. Piasek?
Last year, we changed the graduation requirements policy to actually reflect that required virtual course was no longer required, just because students spend so much time on technology. Anyway.
Great. Anything else? Mr. Wad?
Yeah, so I guess I'd just like to follow up on something that Mr. Clark was talking about regarding partnering with other schools. So it looks like that's becoming pretty common among rural schools, right? Form these consortiums.
Yep.
Is there any opportunity for our program, eAchieve, to possibly partner with other districts that, where the cost of startup or even operations is, from a scalability perspective, much more challenging for them, and give us an opportunity to perhaps increase enrollment while perhaps decreasing our costs by sharing those, those costs in the platform and so forth. Have we looked at that at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have had a part-time partnership for a number of years with a number of districts, where if a district says, we want to work with you, we'll send our students to you for calculus or whichever class it is, and agree to do that, then we reduce their part-time course rate. But it's just been for the part-time schools so far. So incentive for them that they save a little bit of money helps us to continue to fill enrollments and staff our teachers. We were looking, that was what Darren was saying about during pandemic, we're looking for some of those partnerships. I think it really is challenging for schools that they, like you said, they really don't want to lose their students completely. But I do think there's some opportunities out there that we can continue to pursue. Like you mentioned, the consortiums where you could take 2 classes or 3 classes with us. So we have not done that work, but I do think it's a good idea and it's something we should continue to pursue.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think this was really good. It's been, I think, a topic for the past several months, so it was nice to meet you and to get a face as to all the good things that we're doing.
Absolutely. The last handout I presented was the part enrollment data, and I did my best to summarize it on the very first slide. It was a lot of number crunching. But what this is essentially showing is that the total number of students to fill that one student full year FTE, we have more students come through our doors, our virtual doors, to fill that just because of the nature of students that don't stay all year. So the individual year charts are broken up by students that were here for a portion of a year, those that were broken up by semester, then those that were 1 FTE, and then this was the summary of our students. And the trend line shows about what we thought it would, excluding all of the Waukesha kids that transferred in some capacity during COVID. So I just wanted to share that. And our part-time enrollments, a little bit tough to pull the data during the pandemic because we had so many in-district part-time kids, but we're somewhere in that 500 to 600 range right now for part-time enrollments. And like I said, this was the question earlier about our enrollment. So we've got about 450 kids coming back, about 275 new students, and then based on those other enrollments, we should be right about that target again. So we're excited for the opportunity.
So we used to have EACHIEVE, pre-pandemic, we used to have EACHIEVE come in one time a year, and I think we'll start that in the schedule again, because there's always a lot of questions related to EACHIEVE, just because it's a different delivery model, I think, but.
Was this helpful? Was I able to answer some of the most
It was.
questions? Okay.
I think it was very helpful, and I think just, you know, to Mr. Clark's point, there are so many good things that are happening. It is a very valuable part of our district that making sure we understand and can support you and hear about all the good things you're doing, I think is equally important.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate that. Thanks, everyone.
Jason, can you send Justin and I this stuff back?
I just shared it with you, yes.
Okay, moving on, our next discussion item is the monthly budget report. Sherry?
So overall, as I tend to be saying every month, we are doing well. We're on target with the majority of the things where we expect to be. For revenues in our Fund 10, we received our April lottery credits, and our City of Waukesha, they pay us monthly for taxes. And so we've collected 81.7% of our tax dollars, right in line with where we were last year. In May, June, and July, we'll receive monthly payments from the City of Waukesha, and then in August, we'll get all the final tax payments in. We do book them at the end of June as receivables, so they'll be showing up as revenue in this school year, but we won't be receiving the funds until August. That's typical. That's the standard way that works. We also received our mobile home taxes in April. That's a smaller amount. Interest continues to be very favorable for us, and we earned $282,000 in April in interest, compared to $18,000 last April, so quite a significant difference. I didn't put together the budget transfers yet. I think there's still some things we need to research and make sure we've got the complete picture, and should be bringing that back next month. Inter-district sources, really just EACHIEVE tuition again. We received our common school library payment this year. It was the largest that we have ever had to date, surpassed last year by $150,000. And that's because it's based on interest. The fund earns interest, and it's based off of your number of students in your census, but it's also based on interest that the fund earns. So it makes sense that we received more funding this year. Federal funds, just grant payments that we are expecting to have. But so far, we've received, 64.88% of our revenue. So we're right in line with where we expect to be for revenue. A little bit of difference from last year is mainly the timing of claims and filing of claims, which are a big part of our revenue. For expenditures, we're still on target with salary and benefits. Don't expect any surprises at this point in time. Special ed's running a little higher, regular ed's running a little lower, but across the two of them, they'll be good. That's for benefits and salary. Purchase services, as usual, utilities, people travel, personal services. There are really no major things that jumped out for personal services. A lot of smaller expenditures like the officials and background checks, just our normal monthly type things. And then the tuition payments that were in there were for our 4K partners. Let's see. Non-capital objects, just supplies. Largest portion, though, is technology, which was a payment to Apple of $479,000. Capital objects, we had spent $317,000 with Total Mechanics. That was expected. It's part of our HVAC project being funded by ESSER. So that was a big payment that was made toward that. Otherwise, not too much. Overall, our spending's in line where we expect it to be. Fund 27 had very minimal activity in April. just some tuition for Project Search and then grant payments and Medicare payments, but otherwise pretty minimal. And everything else there was really not a lot of activity. They've got most of their spending other than salary and benefits down by this point in time. 72.56% of our special education budget has been spent. Talked about tax levy. Health insurance is still looking very strong. We are still running at a very good surplus with that. Let me quick pull that document up. I can share the exacts for that one. So we increased our overall reserve this last month by another $63,000. So we have our main amount of our fund, a reserved fund balance of the 5.3 million, that never changes, but then in our liability accounts, we have an additional 6.8 million. So we're very well funded on our self-insurance, and I know Darren's working with our companies for keeping our rates steady moving forward to try to use up some of that money. Dental's in the same way. We're not really growing the dental, but we've got a lot of a good reserve to it, so it's holding its own throughout the year here. Excuse me, I keep losing this. Yeah, dental, I think, what did we do? We increased dental only by about 16,000 throughout the course of the year. Now, dental does tend to be a little bit busier in July and August, as teachers have off and have more time to take care of their appointments. But we're in good position with that. I think that's about it. We talked about the tax levy already. Any questions on budget, or we're working on next year's budget, and we'll be starting that presentation cycle soon with where we're at.
Any comments, questions? Thank you, Sherry. All right, the next discussion item is the ESSER update.
We have received a little more than $2 million in our ESSER 2 funds. We still have a little shy of $5 million to claim, but we do have about $2 million in HVAC projects this summer. And then we have about $700,000 in some textbooks and materials we'll be purchasing. So we do plan on spending all this money by the end of the summer, and then we'll be able to submit our claim. So we should come in at the end of September with spending all of this money for ESSER 2.
We did have a question, I think, I can't remember if we talked about this last month or not, but there was a group that did a study on ESSER, and Kelly had reached out to us, and Jess and I did have a chance to sit down with them and kind of work them through. Not only us, we're fully allocated, these funds are fully assigned, but then there's a period of us cutting the PO, but there's also, on our end, the PO and then cutting the checks, but also GPI has to go through an approval process, so there's like 3 different things. And that group was trying to pull all this into nice snapshots of data. And I think we had a successful outcome to that conversation, and reminded them that they could reach out to us if they had any further questions.
No, I think that's good clarification. We did talk about it last month, as when you're trying to trace the funds, if I'm an outsider, right, looking at their portfolio, it gives a very different picture that I have not spent. And we indeed have not only spent it, it's been approved. We've used every dollar of it. It's just where we are in putting on a purchase order, paying it, and funneling it through to get reimbursed. Any other comments or questions? Okay. We then move on to other business. If there's any recommendations for future committee meetings. Okay, we do have a need to go into executive session. Looking for a motion. Mr. McCaffrey, a second.
I move to adjourn, I'll read it. I'll move to adjourn an executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent E, for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Pupil transportation contract and the security project.
A second?
Second by Mrs. Voigt. Just we need a roll call.
Ms. Voigt,
Aye.
Ms. Kozlowski,
Aye.
Mr. McCaffrey.
Aye.
Dr. Piasek.
Aye.
Mr. Wad.
Aye.
It is approved 5-0. We can now go into executive session.